Thank you, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, and good afternoon to all members of the media, wider viewing public of Trinidad and Tobago. As the Honorable Leader of the Opposition preluded, I am going to be dealing today with NGC, and in particular NGC and S.I.S. It was only recently that I called upon the government to be fully transparent with the population of Trinidad and Tobago with respect to an arbitration that has been taking place for quite a while, 8 to 9 years, between NGC and S.I.S. In March 2014, the UNC government had awarded a contract to S.I.S. for $162 million US, approximately 1.1 billion TT dollars, to design and build a water recycling plant at Beetham. We all know it as the Beetham wastewater plant contract. And from the outset, the award of this contract, and there were allegations surrounding it that there was corruption with respect to the bids and who got the highest bid or the lowest bid and these types of things. Nevertheless, they awarded it to S.I.S. The works were supposed to be completed by October 22nd, 2015. The UNC government paid S.I.S. in cash from NGC's coffers, a mobilization advance of approximately $34.4 million US, which was 226 million TT dollars, at 20% of the contract sum. Of course, the regular and normal mobilization is 10% of a contract. So immediately at the outset, you had the UNC government taking cash from NGC, doubling the mobilization fee and paying that to S.I.S., 226 million TT dollars. Furthermore, the original contract stated points at which S.I.S. was supposed to repay these sums to NGC as work was carried on and done. The UNC government amended that contract to push back the date of the repayment of the 226 or the utilization of the $226 million to a point in time way after it was originally supposed to happen. And of course, the repayment never came, nor the value for work ever deducted from the sums of money that NGC continued to pay. NGC issued a notice of termination on its contract on 20th of November 2015, which was, of course, under the PNM administration. We came in September 2015. This was only done after S.I.S. indicated that it had underbid on the project and said that it was demobilizing from the work site. So when the PNM came in September 2015, one of the first things S.I.S. did was say they underbid on the project, they wanted more money than it was originally contracted for, and they began to demobilize and take all of their equipment off of the site. They began to distance themselves from completing the works on September 14th, 2015. The general election was 1 week before, on September 7th, 2015, and they started to demobilize by October 2015. By the time S.I.S. was terminated, it had been paid $121,745,000 US, approximately 853 million TT dollars, which was supposed to represent 75% of the work completed. This was paid out of NGC's cash. On the 23rd of December 2015, NGC went to court, again on a PNM government's directions, and obtained an interim freezing order, freezing $180 million of S.I.S.'s assets. And I remember it at the time, because I was the one directing these things. We had found that assets were being shipped from Trinidad to the United States and being put to auction in the United States. So it became apparent to us that there was a liquidation starting to take place by S.I.S. Immediately, we instructed lawyers to go to court, and they successfully obtained an injunction freezing S.I.S.'s assets up to the tune of $180 million in December 2015. There's been extensive litigation related to this matter since late 2015 to protect NGC, the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago, and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago by extension. There were court proceedings all the way to the Privy Council, where NGC succeeded in setting sham transactions aside. Because what SIS did is with another company called Rainforest Resorts Limited, they gave 4 mortgages and a debenture to this shelf company, a company that had no assets. And again, NGC had to go to court to set these aside. It went all the way to the Privy Council. And it was on February 20th, 2020, in civil action of 2015-04374 between NGC S.I.S. and Rainforest Resorts, Madam Justice Joan Charles set aside these mortgages and the debenture, calling them sham transactions. So again, this was done to protect the taxpayers and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And the court held that these were sham transactions, set them aside. There was complex and extensive litigation, but NGC was successful and ensured that it continued to freeze SIS's assets to the tune of $180 million. I'll provide at the end of this a handout capturing all of these facts, right? NGC commenced arbitration proceedings against SIS in 2016, where it sought inter alia to recover sums of money that it claimed were overpaid to SIS, plus other costs incurred subsequent to the termination of the contract. SIS counterclaimed in the arbitration that it was wrongfully terminated and claimed that NGC owed it money. Those arbitration proceedings, ladies and gentlemen, took place over the last 9 years, being prosecuted by NGC under P&M administration. Our policy was to protect the taxpayers and to pursue hundreds of millions of dollars that were paid and no value provided. The arbitration and its results, the decision, are and have to be in the public's interest. The outcome has to be of interest to us, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. On August 16th of this year, a couple weeks ago, I called on the government and the current board of NGC to advise us, the population, as to whether NGC was successful in the arbitration. In fairness to the government and this new board of NGC, we allowed them the opportunity to respond, to provide the details to the population, to say whether NGC or SIS won this arbitration and what was the outcome. Of course, there's been crickets, radio silence, no response whatsoever. Today, I tell the population of Trinidad and Tobago, it is our understanding that the decision in the arbitration was handed down on or around the 1st of August, 3 weeks plus ago, and that NGC was successful. I'm asking the government today on your behalves and the board of NGC whether it was found that SIS was properly terminated and whether it was found that there was an overpayment to SIS of approximately $49 million, which is 343 million TT dollars, an overpayment found by the arbitrator, an overpayment to SIS of $343 million that must now be turned to the taxpayers and the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Further, was it part of the order that costs incurred after the termination are also to be paid by SIS to NGC in the sum of millions of dollars? And this is in addition, of course, to legal costs being awarded. Furthermore, it was shocking to me that there is a current board member. I'm asking the question, is there a current board member of the NGC appointed by the UNC government who was part of the over-certifying of payments to SIS for this Beetham wastewater plant? Is there a current board member of the NGC appointed by this UNC government who was a person certifying overpayments to SIS with respect to this Beetham wastewater plant that we now know was properly terminated, and an arbitrator has awarded that hundreds of millions of dollars are to be repaid to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, it is the PNM government who pursued this on your behalves, and it is a PNM administration's policy with respect to corruption, allegations of corruption, and the pursuit of white-collar crime, that today we can ask this government that is in place now on the current NGC board, what are they going to do about the recovery of these hundreds of millions of dollars on your behalf? And also, why is it that they did not tell the population this was the result of the arbitration? The second point I'd like to raise is with respect to a recent decision of the High Court on July 23rd, 2025. And this is between the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago and the former directors of the sport company. This is part of the live sport debacle. On the 23rd of July 2025, the Honorable Justice Rahim gave a decision that should be a warning for all of those who are now on boards who can find themselves in similar situations. The court in this matter related to live sport has found that those former directors and some of the executive management are liable to the people of Trinidad and Tobago in that the decision that they carried out, and this judgment speaks to it, instructions from the Ministry of Sport with respect to live sport to award a sole select contract to a company called E-Beam. Rewind a little bit. Months before this decision, Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago was successful against E-Beam, a company owned by a Mr. Daniel at the time, who is now deceased, where a sole select contract of over $30 million was directed to Sport TT to be given, and the services were never provided. The court ordered in that matter that E-Beam should repay Sport TT $30 million. This is the follow-up. Again, it was a PNM government that decided to make sure that the law was upheld. The directors were found liable. In that, instructions came directly from the Ministry of Sport to use sole select, a company. They were told who is the company, not even told to use just a sole select tender process. They were told, use E-Beam. This is what you're to award. This is what it is for. And the court has found that directors should not take those types of directions. They have a duty to the companies of which they are directors. They have fiduciary duties. And this now is a landmark case. So I'm warning, we, the PNM administration, are warning all of those who now hold board positions. If you are given instructions by those outside of the company to do certain things that you have concerns about, to break the law, and now you have public procurement law in place, which makes it even more onerous, you will be held personally liable. So that is another example. We pursued on 2 occasions corruption related to live sport, and the PNM administration was successful in both with respect to these matters. There are other matters in court right now. These are civil matters. And I'm asking the population to keep a very close eye on the EMBD matters, where there are serious allegations of corruption. You had a judge at first instance, then Justice Abood in 2020, August 2020, finding that there were allegations of corruption that needed to be answered. The matter went all the way up to the Privy Council. Privy Council rejected some of the appeals. Defenses were supposed to be filed. And if the government believes that they can just discontinue these matters and sweep all of these allegations under the rug, the population of Trinidad and Tobago should be concerned. It is of note to us as well that what happened is the current chairman of NGC, an attorney at law, came out a few weeks ago, and I suspect it is because they knew, or this decision of NGC S.I.S was on its way to start shouting about millions of dollars in fees being paid to the attorneys. The first point is, I found it quite ironical and hypocritical that that particular individual was speaking about feeding on the trough by lawyers. And I remind you, in the period 2010 to 2015, that individual sent 2 invoices to the state and state bodies for $1 million each. One invoice, $1 million for pre-action protocol letter, the current chairman of NGC, and another for $1 million for a statement of case. There is no way that a pre-action protocol letter or a statement of case could ever cost $1 million each. But that is the type of individual we're dealing with, and the individuals we're dealing with. Very briefly, it was quite timely that yesterday NGC published its financial statements for the year ended 2024, 31st of December. And I'm hearing it all over the news about the success of NGC and how it's made $1.6 billion in profit and how well it has done and the turnaround. I just wanted to point out to the population that is for the year ended December 2024. All of that, again, is as a result of the P&M policies, the work we did, and all that we brought home. And one only needs to read, again, quite ironic, the chairman's report signed by a Mr. Gerald Ramdeen, where they talk about all of the success NGC had and how they recorded a profit after tax of $1.6 billion. And this represents a vast and welcome improvement of the loss of $2.9 billion from a reported loss of $1.3 billion for the previous year, 2023. And he goes on to say the loss recorded in 2023 was principally as a result of impairment charges of $1.8 billion. That loss was as a direct result of the work done by the UNC in 2010 to 2015, where they negotiated a bad contract for NGC, and NGC continues to have losses in the billions of dollars. It goes on to talk about why it was successful. The restructuring of Atlantic Trains 2 and 3 became effective on the 1st of October 2024, which represented a new opportunity for NGC to sell cargoes of LNG. Never happened before. Again, that is the work of the previous P&M administration, who from 2018 to December 2023 negotiated with BP and Shell for the restructuring of Atlantic LNG. One of the things, apart from higher gas prices, we managed to negotiate on your behalf was we also negotiated a shareholding in Trains 2 and 3, where we can now get cargoes for 2 and 3. And that is one of the things that is bringing success to NGC today. Again, pure P&M policy and competence. They go on to talk about Beachfield Manatee upgrade in 2024, which is going to be used for Shell Manatee. Again, that was P&M policy. And when you read through this, everything in here, they talk about Project Lara and the first industrial scale solar park at Brechin Castle, NGC. Again, P&M policy. And the first LNG cargoes from Atlantic Trains 2 and 3 following the commercial restructuring exercise. The achievement of National Energy Corporation in being awarded the best government initiative for its green hydrogen pilot plant project. It was the P&M cabinet that took the decision for us to pursue these things. So ladies and gentlemen, it is important that as we monitor NGC, we understand its success and its turnaround is due to the work of the previous administration. And I will end on the NGC point on this note. NGC will only be successful once there is gas for it to sell. NGC is going to have serious difficulties based on the policy decisions that this current government has taken to walk away from cross-border gas. You would recall the Prime Minister immediately on her swearing in saying Dragon is dead, and immediately talking about Grenada, Guyana, and Suriname. We now know that none of those will come to fruition anytime soon, if ever. So ladies and gentlemen, NGC has to be carefully looked at, and now that it has positive cash balances in the billions of dollars once again, let us continue to monitor it and make sure that what happened in 2010 to 2015 does not happen again, and it becomes a nest egg of corruption by the current administration. The last point I raised, because the media had reached out asking about it, is this debt that is owed to NGC by TNTech to about $7 billion. That is something that we grappled with. That is something that necessitates government intervention, and we will be looking on with interest to see, because when we came in 10 to 15, we inherited billions of dollars in debt in that area. The government has come out and said that they're not increasing electricity rates, which I understand is a policy decision. They must now look at how is TNTech going to repay that debt that NGC is carrying. Those are the matters that I came here to raise today, and I thank you. Thank you, Leader.